Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and I'll be your host. And today we're going to be talking about making deeper connections with nomads using a game called Campfire. And I'm here today with the creator of the game, Joe Sprague. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well, and I'm excited because we're going to play Campfire today with our viewers. So hopefully they're going to go right out and buy Campfire after and use it in their journey. But first of all, Joe, I know you're also a digital nomad at the moment. So can you first tell me about your background and how you became a digital nomad?
Do you mean this background or a personal background?
That's a real
Um,
background, by the way. We established this before we started recording. Can
yeah,
you
this is
imagine,
this is real.
viewers? This is not real.
Okay, yeah. So my background and how I became a digital nomad. So I didn't start out with the intention of becoming a digital nomad. It sort of happened to me by accident. Actually had no interest in travel. And then I was working in my hometown at a job. It was kind of boring, and everybody my age was like getting married, buying a house, settling down, and I was just kind of bored and dissatisfied. And then some coworkers were going on a 2 week service trip to the Dominican Republic, like volunteer trip. And so I didn't have anything better to do with my vacation time. So I just decided to join them, and we volunteered at a school in the Dominican Republic. And while I was there, the school asked me, "Hey, do you want to come volunteer here full time?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm super bored with my job and with my life, and like it could be fun to live in another country, learn another language." So I signed up for a 3 year contract to like volunteer at the school. Um, and About a year in, I realized I had some ideological differences with the school. And then it was kind of in the middle of the semester, so I didn't want to leave them like without a staff member in the middle of the semester. So I finished out a semester and ended up spending 2 years in the Dominican Republic. And then after that, I was looking for new jobs in the US and ended up getting a remote job. And then so right away, I decided I'm going to visit all of my friends living in different places and just work while I'm there and see how that goes. So I did that for about a year. And then after that, I ended up joining Remote Year. And with Remote Year, I just started traveling full time, living out of a backpack. And then a year after that, I met the Nomad Cruise for the first time. And that's basically been my primary community for the last 6 or 7 years. And so, yeah, I just sort of fell into the lifestyle by accident. In total, I've been living the lifestyle 10 or 11 years and didn't ever plan to, but now I'm living it and loving it.
Wow, you're one of the OG digital nomads based on this story. That's incredible. And a very unusual start, I have to say, to getting on the road to travel. I'm sure you never imagined when you first went to the Dominican Republic, but that would lead to actually living there that long.
Yeah, yeah.
And Joe, when you have been on this 10 to 11 year journey, how was it with making connections with people you would meet? Because I know we're going to talk about that today. Like when you first started going, I know you're visiting your friends at first, but then as you like joining these different communities, Remote Year, Nomad Cruise, what were the quality of those connections like?
Yeah, so I started off visiting friends, so it was already existing connections. And then when I joined Remote Year, it was sort of like this community of 80 people all traveling together. And it's funny because at first I thought, oh my gosh, everybody in this group of 80 people, we're all best friends and we're like super close and like everybody just loves each other. And I was a bit naive about that because after a couple of months, a bunch of drama happened and there was conflicts and we realized like some people just don't like each other and like that's okay. That's normal life, to be honest. You don't always like everyone. But so the first couple of months I had this honeymoon period of feeling like everything is amazing and perfect. And then I realized like, okay, relationships are hard, relationships take work. And then after I left Remote Year, I was traveling on my own for a bit. And I felt like I'm a pretty extroverted person, so it's pretty easy for me to meet people. But I felt like all of my connections with people were so surface level and they never went deeper. And I wasn't really getting to know people, like really know people. And yeah, I struggled with that a bunch. I really like to connect on a deeper level. And so the superficial connections weren't really satisfying for me. And yeah, when I joined the Nomad Cruise, well, that's sort of when the creation of Campfire started. And I don't know if you want to get right into that.
Yeah, why
But
don't we? Why don't we get into that? So
yeah,
so you had joined the Nomad Cruise your first time and you got the idea on the boat? Is that what happened?
well, so the idea started way back. But the sort of creation of the game started right before Nomad Cruise. So I had been traveling on my own and wanted to build these deeper connections with people. And so I started playing this game with people where we would write questions on pieces of paper, like any question that came to your mind, and we would put it all in a bowl and pass it around and just pull a question out and ask it. And we were having a lot of fun doing that, getting to know each other. And I was just collecting the best questions from playing that with people and just keeping them in a bag. And when I got to Nomad Cruise in 2016, I had that bag of questions with me and I just started playing on the cruise with people. And people got really excited about it. And I made some really good connections through playing that with people on the third cruise. And then afterward, people started encouraging me to turn it into a product and like actually develop it. And so that's kind of how that started. Yeah.
Great. Well, I know it wasn't an overnight journey to make this game. I've actually talked with you through several of the iterations, especially getting the final product made. But can you reveal the final product? I know you've got it right there with you.
Yeah. So here's the game. This one's a bit beat up because I have been carrying it around for a while.
This is what a new one looks
And
like, guys, if you could see it. Oh, yeah, this is
you gotta hold it in
Joe.
front of you. Hold it in front of you. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. Joe just gave me my own copy, and you can see it's a tin. So it's really nice to keep the cards safe in the tin. I love that, Joe, that you made that choice because I think it's better than a cardboard box for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to make something that, like, for nomads who are packing their stuff tightly all the time, I wanted it to kind of be durable. So you can pack it in there with a really tightly packed bag and it won't get smashed up. And the cards are actually waterproof too. So if you
Are
want to play
they?
next to the pool or like on a greasy dinner table or whatever, like you can do that and the cards will survive. So
I love how small the cards are too. I was trying to show that. Like it's very it's just so practical. I actually have had a friend that made a deck of cards and they were just too big. I wanted to travel with them, but it was not very practical. So okay, I
yeah,
love this. And it says it's for 2 to 20 players on the top of the
yeah,
tin. So
yeah.
okay,
So that
yeah.
Yeah, so 2 to 20 players is like a broad range. Ideally, it's better for like 6 or 7 people. But yeah, you can play with any size group. You could even play with more than 20 people, but it starts to get a little bit unruly when you've got more than 20 people in a group. So
Yeah, and I've heard there's different. Well, let's ask. What do you think is the best way to play it? Like I've seen people in small groups going with different questions, or do you think you should ask the group of 6 to 7 like the same question in the circle? How do you best like to play Campfire?
yeah, so when it's a smaller group, it works best to give everyone a chance to answer every question. So that works really well if it's just 2 people. But it's not as much of a game with 2 people. It's more of like a heart to heart kind of conversation. But yeah, so the smaller the group is, the easier it is for everyone to answer a question. And then as the group gets larger, it's better to just basically have one person answer each question. But it's sometimes nice to give other people the opportunity to share an answer if they have something like that comes up that's just like, oh, this is really interesting, I want to share this. So usually the way that I recommend playing it is someone will ask a question and choose a person to answer it, and then that person will answer the question, and then after that the floor kind of opens up for anyone to share. for a couple minutes, and then you move on to the next question.
Okay. And now one thing I love about Campfire is that there are 4 levels of questions. Can you share what those levels are?
Yeah, so the levels of the questions that go, it's sort of like a metaphor for a real life campfire. So you don't just snap your fingers and have a real life campfire, and you don't just snap your fingers and have a deep connection with someone. You have to sort of build your way there. So the questions are organized in categories the same way that you would build a fire. So they start with kindling, then you add flames, then you get some sparks, and then you end with embers. So the way that works, kindling are questions. They're sort of warm-up questions. They're not too personal. They're usually not really about yourself. They're just about some random, maybe your thoughts on some topic, or yeah, they're just some light questions to get you started. Then once people start to feel comfortable in the environment, you can start asking the flames, the second level, which is questions that are more personal. They're about you, about who you are, how you got to where you are. And so you're being asked to share more about yourself. Then the third question is the sparks, and this is usually everyone's favorite category. These are taboo questions, adult topics, things that get a little bit wild, and they tend to be a lot of fun for like a party environment. I think they're kind of the key to making this sort of a more of a game and not so much just conversation. And then the last category of questions is embers, which are, as the campfire has been going for a while and things start to sort of calm down a little bit and you start to feel like a bit connected to the people around you. These questions are a bit more vulnerable and they go really deep on topics that people might not usually feel comfortable opening up and sharing. And so you play this game, you go through the stages as people feel comfortable, and you stop when people are ready to stop. You don't have to go all the way to embers if you don't want to go that deep. You just kind of go with how comfortable the people playing are.
Yeah, I would say in my experience when I've played, we ask a lot of questions, and then there's just kind of a natural time when we all feel that it's time to end the game. But I've always felt more connected to the people I've played with. And I'm wondering about you, or do you have any stories of connections that you've made in your travels by using this game?
Yeah, well, so one thing I want to say before I share the story about that is the game does tend to sort of reach a natural ending where people are like, okay, I think we're done. Let's move on to do something else. But sometimes you get stuck in this group where it's like this game's been going on for 3 hours and nobody's saying that they're ready to stop, and like you can kind of feel that like people are kind of getting tired of it, but nobody wants to be that person to say like let's stop playing. So I really recommend, especially with larger groups, that you do 2 things. One, you pick a facilitator who's going to sort of direct the conversation and sort of say what stage we're at and what time is a good time to end. So you have that. And then the larger the group gets, the more important it is to just set a timer and just say, we're going to play for an hour. And then you set that timer. And when an hour is up, it kind of gives people permission to say like, okay, this has been a great conversation. Now let's go do something else. So I would definitely recommend doing something like that, like sort of setting some boundaries and picking a facilitator. Yeah. And then you asked about, do I have any stories about connections I've made through the game? So my favorite stories about connections to the game are actually the stories that other people tell me. So, people tell me that they were playing this game on dates all the time. I hear about people took this game on a date and they played with a date and like just made a great connection. So that's really cool to hear. And then I hear people playing it in all sorts of places, just around the world. Like there was this 7-figure business leader conference, and like someone sent me a photo of like all these like super wealthy people playing Campfire, and I'm like, what? Like I feel like kind of special because I had an impact on that group of people who in normal life I would feel like I can't access that group of people really. And even I got a picture recently of some people playing it in Ukraine, and I was like, oh, this is like so cool that I can brighten the lives of people going through like a really hard time. And so that's really cool for me. But then also, so the person who sent me a picture in Ukraine is a mutual friend of ours. I'm sure you already know that it's Curtin. Um,
Oh yeah.
and so Curtin is actually my story of a connection who I made through this game. So on Nomad Cruise 3, this wasn't like a formalized game or anything, but we had this meetup board where we would write meetups that we wanted to do on the cruise. And I wrote down like conversation questions or deep conversations or something like that. And just a few people showed up, like maybe 5 people. And Curtin was one of them. And we showed up on the back of this cruise table with this. Curtin went so deep so fast, and his just like ability to connect with people and like really listen to people, it was just so like inspiring to me. And I was like, wow, I really like just sitting and talking to this guy, and like I really like the conversations that we're having. And so he was one of the first people that I really got excited about this game with, and he got excited about it too. And yeah, now I would consider Curtin one of my best friends that I've had in my entire life. So yeah, I think that came about partly through this game.
Wow, thank you for sharing. No, like you have no idea when you go deep with these conversation questions, the bond that you can really form. And, you have a friend for life perhaps now from this. And I'm sure around the world, like you said, these people in these groups you've not been able to access, in these countries you may not even be able to access right now. People are, making these bonds, and it can build many things in the future. So yeah, I love Campfire, love this idea. One question for you before we go into some questions from Campfire together. Is Campfire available on an app, or is it only in card form?
So it's not yet available on an app, but hopefully soon. I This is my first time ever creating a physical product and trying to distribute it internationally, and I'm realizing that there are a lot of logistical challenges, and this is not like creating a physical product and selling it is not my specialty. So I'm like completely overwhelmed, and there's a lot of learning. And one of the things I'm realizing is that it's actually quite expensive. There are a lot of different costs associated that I was completely unaware of. And so I am struggling to make a profitable game as a physical product. And I'm still working on that, still trying to figure out ways to make that work. But I'm realizing that a better business model for me is to make an app. So I'm starting to work on developing this into an app. And at first I was resistant to making it an app because I really feel like these days it's so hard to connect with people in person. All the connecting is like kind of forced online, and it's like, oh, we have to do everything online, and you have to do things through Facebook and through some app. And I'm sick of being in front of screens all the time. I work in front of a screen, and I mean, it's amazing the things that screens enable us to do, but I really wanted to create a physical product or a thing that helps people connect in the physical world. So for a long time, I was like, no, it has to be a physical product. It has to be a physical product. But like I said, I think it makes more sense to be as a business, to be an app. It's easier to distribute, a lot less costs involved. And it actually enables me to recreate some of the features of the original way that we were playing this, where everyone was writing questions on pieces of paper, and it was a more dynamic game with more input from the people playing. And that would be much easier for me to create with an app where people can type in their questions. And there are a lot of other features that I've been sort of brainstorming and would like to build that just aren't possible with the physical game. And so I really have this vision to turn it into not just a game, but really more of like guided conversations for wherever you want to go and whatever topics you want to talk about with whatever group of people, to create a tool that helps people to do that. So yeah, I'm starting to work on that. I don't have a clear timeline of when it will be available because this is sort of like my side project, not my day job, unfortunately. But yeah. So right now
Okay.
it's just a physical card game.
Well, I feel honored to have a copy, and as we know, there is a chance to get it now. But let's see what happens in the future. I'm also happy to hear that there's going to be different iterations in a digital form of it, so people will have more access to it, and it can be more malleable, like you said. So without further ado, Joe, are you ready to ask each other some campfire questions to demonstrate how this works?
All right, let's do it.
I have one from each level, actually. Let's see, I'm gonna ask you the second level, the flames, just because I feel like it. um, Joe, in what ways have you changed in the past year or two?
That's one of my favorite questions. Wow, in the past year or two. So for me, the past year or two have been really challenging. I've been struggling with some health issues, uh, which they've really pushed my mental health to its limits, and it's been really a year of struggling to feel like I'm staying afloat, basically. And I've made a lot of progress, and it's been like a healing journey, which is something that I've heard a lot of friends go on some different healing journeys for different reasons. And this is, I think, really the first time for me that I've been on such a dramatic healing journey, and it was very slow progress at first, and then made some dramatic progress in a couple months, and then recently I've been making a lot of progress and feeling a lot better. But yeah, it's changed me a lot. It's changed a lot of my attitude and mindset. And I would say one of the ways that it's changed me is that it's made me take a lot less for granted. And it's also created for me like a sense of humility. Like I think I had before, I'm still pretty young, and before I had never really had a period in my life where I was faced with my own physical limitations in this way, and in a sense my own mortality, like realizing like, oh, health and feeling great is not forever. And so yeah, I think it just gave me a little bit more humility and a little bit more like realizing how precious the things that we have are, and the good health and the good friendships and connections and ability to travel, all this stuff. Yeah, I guess I would say overall it made me a lot more grateful. So
Oh, I'm glad in a way, I'm happy that you've had a chance to have this journey. I wish that it wasn't a painful experience in any way, but pain does
yeah,
really make you grow. So thank you
yeah.
for sharing that. In this case, would you normally with Campfire ask me back the same question, or do you want to ask a
Yeah,
different question?
yeah, I can do that.
Either way.
With Yeah, like I said earlier, if you're playing with a smaller group, it makes sense for both people to answer. And if you're playing with a larger group, then you don't always have time for everyone to answer. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that. So yeah, how about you? In what ways have you changed in the past year or two?
I would say for me, the biggest change has been going from being a completely nomadic person to having a base where I spend about half the year, which is Lisbon, Portugal. And also buying an apartment. I bought an apartment in 2021 in Lisbon, and I've never owned property before. And I'm not a natural person who can fix homes and do construction and I don't have a brain for that. So that's been a challenge to like outsource all of those things that needed to be fixed with the apartment that I bought. So I feel a little bit like I guess I would say I feel I have a child that is living in Lisbon. I'm not in Lisbon at the moment, but you do take care of this child. Of course, for those of watching with children, it's nothing like having a child, but it is that new level of responsibility. And so I feel that I've become a little less carefree, at least related to being a property owner and having to stay in a base and pay taxes and things like that. But it has made me feel more like an adult. And I think the word that you used is perfect. I feel grateful for that opportunity to grow rather than just staying in a kind of similar pattern for 2 more years. It also gave me something to focus on during the pandemic, which so many of us struggled mentally through. So I think it buoyed me a little bit because I was focused on something.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. You can ask any question you want from this game to me. Your turn.
Okay. Do you want to pick a level?
I'll take the Sparks, the one that you said was the favorite.
Sparks. Okay.
What I
Yeah, this is
understand
the
to be the
favorite.
sexiest category.
Yes, yes. Let's see. Okay, I picked a few out that would be good to ask you, but I'm just gonna pick one from this stack. Okay. What is something you've done that was out of character for you?
Ooh, I would say at the time, this might sound like a lame answer, but at the time, running a marathon. Because
Oh.
I was like my stepfather said I used to get winded running from the front door to the mailbox, and he wasn't actually lying about that. I wasn't a physically active child. I was just reading and watching movies all the time. Growing up in Ohio,
Oh.
where you're also from, and so I just was not a sports person. And then I actually got challenged to do it through dating someone who was really into running, and then he broke up with me, and I was like, wait. I want to prove to you, like, I actually am capable of doing this. He never knew it that I ran the marathon in the end, but it was a kind of a negative motivation to do it. But it made me do it. I actually ended up running 2 marathons. And so then I started to see myself as like, this is no longer out of character. This is something that I'm capable of doing. And so it became really empowering at the end.
Wow, that's actually really interesting to me. I wouldn't have guessed that about you because you and I have actually done a lot of running together. It's like one of
Yeah.
the main things that you and I have done together, I think. So I would have never guessed that that was at one point out of character for you.
Yeah, I was never physically active until probably about 6 years ago. So yeah, it's amazing what can happen along the way and what we're really capable of. And also I was just always thin. I was lucky that I had won a genetic lottery in a sense. And so I didn't feel the urge to need to be physically active. So that's as a child, that's what happened. But yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Joe? What is something you've done that's out of character?
Something I've done that's out of character. I wasn't prepared for you to ask this question back to me.
I didn't know what you were gonna ask me
Let's
either.
see.
But yeah.
Something
And
I've done
sometimes in
that's
the
out of
game, I know you
character.
get time. You get time to wait for other people's answers, but yeah, one on one.
Yeah, yeah, it's tricky. Well, okay, this might not be the best answer, but I'll actually kind of repeat what you said. Running was something that I do a lot now, that at one point was also for me something that was very out of character. Um, I've always been, I would say, a physically active person, but I always hated running. Like, to me, it was like kind of boring and kind of just like, I don't know, painful in a way. Um, but when I became a nomad, I always felt like I need to stay active somehow. And like sometimes it's hard because you either didn't find a good gym or don't have a gym membership or don't have the equipment with you to do whatever sport you would like to do. And my favorite sports require a lot of equipment like windsurfing and kite surfing and snowboarding. And so these things are not, you can't just like do them. You have to pay money and you have to like register and all this stuff. So I just got into running, not because I liked it, but just because I needed to stay active. And then after a while, I realized like I get a lot of benefits from running. Like after I run, I feel a lot better. I feel like happier and more energetic. And so I started to like it just from that perspective. Um, and then I recently, so about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I quit drinking alcohol completely. And I found like when you're not drinking alcohol, connecting with other people is a challenge in another way because it's like such a social activity. And socially, that's kind of like what people just go do to meet people. And so I've had to be creative in the ways that I meet people. And I've found that running is actually a really good way to meet people. There are running clubs in basically every part of the world. And so whenever I go to a new place and I don't know anyone, and I'm like, I want to meet people, what can I do? I look up things like running clubs and I just show up and just go running and meet people. And it's really cool, a really cool way to meet people. But at one point in my life, that would have been completely out of character for me.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I'm so glad you found running as well. And even with these questions, like I found out things about you I didn't know. So definitely deep connection questions are so much better than just like, hey, how are you? Small talk of the day. I really wish we had more time to ask a lot more questions, but I just wanted to ask you quickly, what are some of your favorite questions that you included in the game?
Yeah, so one of my favorite questions is the one that you asked, in what ways have you changed in the past year or two? I really like that question because I really like I really feel like it gives some insight into what's going on in someone's life and what is like a significant part of their mindset and the things that they've been going through. And it's also something that people like to talk about. People want other people to know what they have been working on for the last year or two, or how they've changed, or what they've gone through, and really gives people this sense of like, oh, I've shared this with people. Now these people know me, and now like I'm known by these people and accepted. So that's one of my favorite questions. And then the other favorite question that I have, I think it's related, is when was a time that you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone, and how did it go? That's,
Nice. Yes.
so yeah, and I like that as well because for me, pushing myself out of my comfort zone is like, I guess I would say it's like one of my main values in a sense. Like I really think that it's important to for people to push themselves out of their comfort zone, to challenge themselves, personal development and self-improvement. And I grew up in a really in an environment where that was kind of cultivated. And for me, it was cultivated through like outdoor adventure and like rock climbing and rappelling. And so I even worked for a while at a summer camp where I was facilitating like a ropes course for campers, and just giving people the opportunity to push themselves out of their comfort zone, to like jump in some obstacle course and like just do some sort of like thing that's completely out of their comfort zone. I saw so many people grow through that, and so I find it a really inspiring topic and thing to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing. I can see why that's one of your favorites. Okay, Joe, I'm going to switch gears now and ask you something that I've been asking many of my guests recently. So, for the digital
Okay.
nomads out there, if you could give them one tip, what would you give them?
Okay. So my main tip, and this is not really exclusively for digital nomads, but I feel like it applies very much to digital nomads, is that anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly at first. So for me, the reason that that's really relevant to digital nomads is because as a digital nomad, you're going to be in environments where you have to do things that you're not confident about, or you feel like you're a beginner and you feel completely out of your element. And you're going to do things poorly a lot, I think, as a nomad. And so I think it's important to be comfortable with that. And then, we all have this desire to do things well. And so sometimes it feels like, if I'm doing it poorly, like I don't like that. But like doing things poorly is the first step on the journey to being able to do something well. And for me, like one specific way that has played out is learning languages. So I think most of the European nomads know a lot more languages than North American nomads like you and I, although you know quite a few languages. But for me, I never learned another language until I was 25. And when I started with Spanish, and I started learning Spanish, and I was like, I feel so dumb. Like I can't say anything correctly, and I'm making mistakes all the time, and my pronunciation is just weird, and just like, and I struggled so much with feeling like I don't want to speak Spanish because I feel like I can't do it well. And then I realized, like, if I ever want to learn Spanish, I have to be comfortable with doing it poorly. And then after a couple of years of speaking Spanish poorly, I got to a level where I felt like I'm actually really comfortable with Spanish. and I can have like a normal social life in Spanish, and that's like really cool. And then I did the same thing recently with Hungarian. I have Hungarian roots, and I spent most of the pandemic in Hungary. And I started learning Hungarian, and Hungarian is a much more challenging language than Spanish. And this phase of feeling like I'm doing it poorly, like I've been learning Hungarian for 3 years, and I'm still in the phase of feeling like I do it poorly. But I've made like so much progress because I'm comfortable with just doing it poorly. And so I think this is like a really important skill as a nomad, whether you're learning languages or learning a new skill or just going to a new place where the culture is different. Like if you really want to do things well or get really comfortable in a new environment, you have to be comfortable doing things poorly at first.
I love that tip. I really want people to remember that. So I'm going to end on that and then ask you if people want to follow you or buy Campfire, where can they find it? Where can they go?
So the best place right now to follow me and kind of know what's going on with Campfire is on Instagram. On the account is Campfire Questions, all one word. And then I also have a website, campfirequestions.com. Right now, my inventory is mostly stuck in Budapest, and I won't be able to ship it until the spring when I get back to Budapest. But I do have about 20 copies with me. So if you happen to be in the same place as I am, right now I'm in Thailand, and then like a month or two, I'll be in Bali. So if you happen to be in those places in the next couple months, connect with me, message me on Instagram, and I can give you a copy. Otherwise, campfirequestions.com in the spring, I would be shipping hopefully pretty much everywhere.
Great. And should we message you at Campfire Questions, the Instagram account?
Yeah, you can message me there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Joe. I'm excited that we got to introduce this game to everybody, guys. Campfire is a lot of fun, and I hope you guys can get a copy and eventually maybe a digital copy.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you. Have a great day, Joe.
Okay, thank you.